It's another Thursday, and Thursdays are meant for us to talk about health. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me on yet another edition of the program You and Your Health aired on Equinoxe Radio Multimedia. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. Being obese comes with a lot of challenges. One of those such challenges are cardiovascular diseases. Tackling such problems may come with a lot of challenges. That's because a lot of people are not aware on how they can control one from getting to the other. On today's edition of the program, we are going to be telling you more about how both of them are linked. And from that, we'll be taking you with an expert who will give us more details, but that will be after this short break. Welcome back. On the line is Dr. Anastas Duday. He's a consultant cardiologist at the Heart Rhythm Specialist working at the Douala General Hospital here in the city of Douala. Once more, good day, doctor. It is a pleasure having you on the program.
Yeah, good day, Immaculate, and good day to the auditors of the Equinoxe television and also to the televiewers. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, doctor, today we are going to be looking at the link between obesity and cardiovascular diseases. But before coming to that, I would like you to tell us what are some common symptoms of cardiovascular diseases and which is more frequent? Which one do people in Cameroon suffer from more?
Yeah, so cardiovascular disease, by definition, as it is easily said, are disease that affects the heart or the blood vessels. So any disease that can affect the heart or the blood vessels, whether it is acquired or whether the person was born with, which is what we call congenital cardiovascular disease, will be a great concern because it is rampant in our milieu, and most of the time people do not feel symptoms until they have complications. So some of the complications people will come with like heart failure, people can come with shortness in breath or swelling of the legs, or either they've been gaining excessive weight, and some of them will also come with stroke. So those are some of the recurrent symptoms of cardiovascular disease. But in general, what the population should know is that most of the time it is asymptomatic. That is, people present no symptom at all until they develop complications. And obesity is actually one of the major risk factors for cardiovascular disease.
And what accounts for the rise in the number of cases, especially here in Cameroon?
One of the most frequent cardiovascular diseases in Cameroon is hypertension, and hypertension is affecting up to about 1/3 of our adult population. That is, every time we come across 3 adults on the street, it is very likely that we just cross one person with hypertension, whether this person know or not. And that's the huge concern because people do not know they have high blood pressure. Then they don't seek for care, and because they don't seek for care, so they don't take medication. So they stay years and years with the disease until they develop complications. So hypertension is really our enemy number one when it comes to cardiovascular disease. But you have other cardiovascular disease, of course, like heart failure, like congenital heart diseases, like thrombosis, when people develop a clot in their veins, and this can cause a very serious condition called pulmonary embolism, which is usually very much associated with sudden cardiac death. And of course, we have myocardial infarction, which we usually call cardiac crisis, which is also associated with sudden cardiac death. So a variety of cardiovascular diseases are rampant in our milieu, and we need to really take this very, very seriously.
So what can trigger a cardiac arrest?
Yeah, most of the diseases that will affect the heart, whether it affects the muscle itself, causing an enlargement in the muscle, what we usually call a big heart. Diseases that affect the heart or that affect the electrical system of the heart, because for the heart to work very well, it has its own electrical system which generates electricity and transmit this electricity to other parts of the heart to function well. So diseases that will affect the electricity generation at the level of the heart can also lead to sudden cardiac death. And one of the most frequent but ignored cause of sudden cardiac death in our milieu is actually myocardial infarction, what we usually also call a cardiac crisis. People suddenly feel a very, very serious chest pain, and they feel stressed with this chest pain. Maybe they don't even seek for help, but actually what it means that one of the arteries giving blood supply to the heart is being blocked, and when this artery gets blocked, then part of the heart is going to die. And if the part of the heart that is affected by the blockage of the artery is very large, then it usually leads to sudden cardiac death. So, and yeah, that's it.
Okay. How can I differentiate between a cardiac arrest and a stroke? Can that differentiation only be done in the hospital, or I can personally do that?
That's very much easy to differentiate between cardiac arrest and stroke, because people coming with stroke, most of the time, the very frequent manifestation of stroke or the common manifestation of stroke will be a loss of movement. Either loss of movement or loss of sight, sudden loss of movement or sudden loss of sight, and at times sudden loss of speech.
Okay.
You see, the sudden loss of movement will usually affect one side of the body. So someone who was maybe doing an activity just suddenly feel like one side of the body cannot move, and that's stroke. So this is usually very easily identified even by the patients themselves before they come to the hospital. They know that they are experiencing a stroke. Now, cardiac arrest is completely different, and cardiac arrest has to be differentiated with cardiac death, with sudden cardiac death. So, cardiac arrest is a situation in which the heart stops beating, and when it stops beating, someone has to intervene very, very quickly to do what we call cardiac massage or cardiac reanimation in such a way that we can actually be able to resuscitate the person. So usually in situation of sudden cardiac arrest, then the person will just fall on the ground and no movement at all, no respiration at all. And if we come and palpate the pulse of this person, then there is no pulse, there is no heart activity, and that means the person is actually undergoing a cardiac arrest, and resuscitation has to start immediately so as to give chances to this person to survive. While contrary to stroke, someone might have stroke and even 2-3 days later, with even no assistance, the person is still alive. It doesn't affect the heart, it affects the brain. So stroke has to do with the brain, while cardiac arrest has to do with the heart that stops either gradually or suddenly. The worst is the sudden cardiac arrest.
Okay, doctor, let's take a case where, let's say, in an area where hospitals are about 2 hours away. In such a situation where, let's say, my father suffers from a cardiac arrest, and knowing that the hospital is still very far, what is the first step I'm supposed to take before thinking about taking him to the hospital?
Yeah, so what the population should actually know about cardiac arrest is that when it happens, time is really very, very important. So the first thing to do is to protect yourself. Don't just jump on someone who is having a cardiac arrest without checking. Maybe this person experienced, for example, maybe it was electricity, and then you don't want to fall on the current itself without having ensured that you are secure. Maybe this person had an accident. You don't want to just go on the road without ensuring that the security is there. So that's the first thing to do. But this can be done very, very quickly. And once this is done, then the second thing is to call for help.
Okay.
Call for help. You shout, yes, I have someone here who is having a problem, and then other people might come and assist you. And the next thing is to do a cardiac massage. Now, the population is not always trained to do the cardiac massage, but this is something that can save lives. And there are really recommendations on how to do the cardiac massage. You might not be able to do to add insufflations on the mouth of the person, but if you do just the cardiac massage, it's already something acceptable. Okay. And in fact, it's what is recommended. And if you have access to what is called the cardiac defibrillators, then that's the top, because you need to actually do cardiac massage, and if the electrical activity of the heart is already improving, then the cardiac defibrillator is going to help resuscitate this person, and then the person can be transported to the hospital for further management. It will be more interesting if the person is at the place that they can call for emergency system, and if the emergency system comes, then they are going to take over from the person. So this is something very, very rare, but it's important that the population should know how to do at least the cardiac massage.
Okay, now let's go to our main topic of concern, which is the link between obesity and cardiovascular diseases. How is the gap? Is it wide or is it a bridge gap?
Yeah, it's actually really one of the epidemic of globalization, and one of the epidemic of our century, because obesity is very simply defined as an excessive amount of fat around the body. So it simply means that the person has an excessive amount of fat. And in our population, there are two ways of viewing this. A number of people, the majority of the population feel it as this is a sign of well-being. It's a sign of wealth. It means that the person is rich.
Exactly.
It's usually say ventre administrative, just to say, okay, this is the boss. So that's it. But the other way of looking at it from the population point of view is that it's a cosmetic concern. Okay. But actually, it's not a sign of well-being, and it's neither a cosmetic concern. It is more than that. It's really a medical problem, because it increases the risk of developing other diseases, including heart diseases that we just discussed, cardiovascular disease, and especially hypertension, high blood pressure. It increases the risk of having diabetes. It increases the risk of developing a number of cancers. Some of the cancers are very, very related to obesity. And if we were to add some other things, of course, we will say it also associated with depression and then some kinds of disability. And then to feel well, we actually need to have a normal weight.
Okay. If you're just joining us, know you're watching or you're listening, for those on radio, the program You and Your Health aired on Equinoxe Radio Multimedia. And I have as guest a cardiologist. He's known as Dr. Anastas. Today, he is a consultant cardiologist and heart rhythm specialist working at the Douala General Hospital. And to participate in the program, you can call the following numbers: 655-511111 or 652-0250. 8050. So now back to you, Dr. Anastas. What is the major cause of obesity?
Usually obesity is associated with a number of behavioral factors, and it is also associated with some changes in the hormonal system of the person. But if we want to make the whole story short, because we can also say obesity, there is some genetic predisposition. So there is really multifactorial. We have genetics, we have factors that are related to the environment, either our behavior or some biologic changes like maybe increase of some hormones in the body. But we want to make the whole story very short. We will say, okay, look at obesity as your account in the bank. If you have a bank account, if you put money in the account, then you get richer and richer and richer. The more you put the money, the more you get rich.
For sure.
Now, if you remove the money, you are always removing the money, then you get poorer and poorer and poorer. If you are removing this money, for example, to distribute or to share with other people, or to do some other things with it that do not also generate money. So it simply means that look at your body as your bank account. The more calories that are put in, then the more obese people will be. And the more calories that are spent, then the more people will lose weight. So the whole story is about putting more calories in.
And so now, when it comes to infants who are suffering with obesity, is there any difference with that of adults?
Yeah, most of the infants that will be suffering from obesity, we should say the first thing is the environment in which people grow. A number of poor behaviors that are associated with obesity are family acquired. It doesn't mean it is absolutely related to genes. It might be a family in which people have the tendency to eat very large amount of food, or it might be a family in which people have the tendency to never eat on the table, to eat many times during the day, or they have the tendency to eat more sweets and more fat, high calorie food, and probably a family in which people are very rarely active. So these factors are mostly related to the environment, and will affect the children from their childhood, and some of the children may therefore grow up with overweight or obesity. It happens very rare that some of the children might be obese because of the genetics predisposition, and therefore that's a different concern, or because of some of the disease that will affect the organs that produce some of the hormones that will increase the chances of keeping with fat. So that's it.
So tell us, what
different from adults?
Okay.
Yes, it's different from adults because most of the adults, the majority of adults, get obese principally because of the intake, because of the food intake. But in general, if children do not have any genetic predisposition and they exercise much, the WHO, the World Health Organization, recommends that children should exercise at least 60 minutes per day. If they eat healthy and they exercise well, then they won't get obese.
So now, tell us, what are some of the health benefits of carrying out physical exercise and enjoying or living a healthy lifestyle so as to avoid cardiovascular disease in case the person is obese? apart from this weight loss and others, what are other lifestyles people need to adopt in order to avoid this from happening?
Yeah, in terms of preventing cardiovascular disease in general, it is all about lifestyle. So the lifestyle changes that are recommended are, of course, to keep on with to look at our weight and to ensure that we keep up with a normal weight, or at least if the weight is increased, if we are obese, then we ensure that the weight doesn't go up, and then we try to lose weight. So that's it. So that is in regard with obesity. But apart from that, it is recommended to stop smoking. If people are smoking, they should stop smoking. So the recommendation is very strict on that, and then to reduce the alcohol consumption for those who are consuming alcohol, to consume alcohol moderately. So that's why it's advised that for men, up to 2 glasses of wine per day are acceptable, and for women 1 glass of wine per day is acceptable. So that's recommended. Apart from that, of course, there is physical activity. We have to keep on moving because regular aerobic exercise is one of the most efficient ways to really burn calories and therefore reduce our weight, and to train the heart in such a way that the heart will be able to resist to some of the aggression, some of the stress that can come and cause disease of the heart. So that's very important, and of course, eating healthy, ensuring that we eat plenty of vegetables and fruit, and that we reduce our salt consumption, that we reduce our fat intake is very important, and then controlling stress. Stress has actually become one of the epidemics of our century of globalization. But it is always good to ensure that we relax enough so that we don't put our heart on very serious stress.
Thank you so much for your time and expertise. That was Dr. Dude. He is a cardiologist and a heart rhythm specialist working at the Douala General Hospital. And that's where we put a cap on this edition of the program Your Health and on Equinoxe Radio Multimedia. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe, and I received technical assistance from Raphael Dipanda. Have a lovely day in the company of more programs on Equinoxe Radio and, of course, television.